When Emma Torres arrives at her new school, she becomes the perfect target for Derek Madison, the most feared guy in the institute. But what Derek doesn't know is that Emma holds a secret that could change everything forever. Emma Torres adjusted the straps of her backpack as she stared at the imposing facade of Lincoln High School in Los Angeles. It was October, and the morning air still retained the heat of the California summer. Students walked in groups, talking and laughing, but Emma felt completely out of place. This was her 5th school in 4 years. Not because of family problems or her parents' work. Emma moved because she needed a fresh start. Again, she kept her head down as she walked toward the main entrance. Some students looked at her with curiosity, but she avoided eye contact. Lincoln High was a typical West Los Angeles school. Middle to upper class students, competitive sports teams, and a well-established social hierarchy. All Emma wanted was to go unnoticed. But that changed when she saw Derek Madison, tall, athletic, with that natural confidence that only the popular, untouchable guys had. He was leaning against the lockers, surrounded by other athletes, all laughing at something he had said. Emma immediately recognized his type, the king of the school, used to everyone following or fearing him. She didn't plan to attract his attention, but fate had other plans. As she walked down the hallway, someone pushed her accidentally. Her books flew to the floor, scattering across the hallway. Some students turned to look, some chuckling. Well, what do we have here?" Emma froze. She didn't need to look up to know whose voice it was. Derek Madison was standing over her, arms crossed, with that arrogant smile she had seen before on other bullies. "I don't think I've seen you before," Derek said. "You're new, right?" Emma didn't respond. She just picked up her books and stood up, trying to pass by him without saying a word. But Derek wasn't finished. "Hey, I'm talking to you!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the hallway. "I asked you a question." Emma kept walking. She had played this game before. The best way to deal with people like him was not to get involved. But Derek didn't like being ignored. That's when she felt it, a strong tug on her backpack, pulling her back. Not strong enough to hurt her, but enough to make it clear that Derek wasn't going to let this slide. Emma stopped. Slowly, she turned around. For a moment, the hallway felt silent. Even the students who hadn't been paying attention before began to watch. Emma met Derek's gaze, and for the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe even a little surprise. "You shouldn't have done that," Emma said quietly. Derek raised an eyebrow. Then he laughed, a slow, mocking laugh. "And why is that?" Emma didn't respond. She just held his gaze, unwavering. Derek tilted his head. "You're kind of weird. You know that?" Some giggles from his friends. Emma turned around and walked away. She didn't need to look back to know that Derek wasn't finished with her yet, and he had no idea what kind of mistake he was about to make. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Emma stayed at the back of the classrooms, responding only when necessary, avoiding eye contact. She ate lunch alone, finding a spot near the edge of the cafeteria where she could watch without being watched. Derek and his friends occupied the biggest table in the center, talking loudly, laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. Occasionally, Emma felt his eyes flicker toward her, but he didn't approach. Not yet. At the end of the day, Emma felt relieved to finally escape the school. The Los Angeles heat was still strong, making the pavement shimmer as she walked toward the bus stop. Just as she was reaching for her phone, she heard a voice behind her. "Hey, new girl!" She turned. Derek was there, hands in his pockets, that smile still plastered on his face. Behind him, some of his friends waited. Emma sighed. "What do you want?" Derek took a slow step forward. "You have an attitude problem, you know that?" Emma didn't respond. Derek's smile widened. "What, you think you're better than me?" Emma let out a short laugh. Not nervous, not scared, just amused. And that, more than anything else, caught Derek off guard. "I think," Emma said slowly, "that you should walk away." Derek laughed, shaking his head. "Oh yeah? And why is that?" Emma leaned in slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you have no idea who I am." Derek scoffed. "And who are you exactly?" Emma didn't respond. Instead, she lifted her phone and pressed a single button on her screen. The loud roar of an engine filled the air. A black Tesla Model S Plaid pulled up next to the curb, the kind of car that made heads turn. The tinted window rolled down slowly, and there he was, Elon Musk. Derek's smile vanished. Emma turned back to Derek, smiling for the first time that day. "Do you still think I'm weird?" she asked. Derek couldn't answer, because for the first time in his life, he was the one feeling small. Emma watched as Derek's confident smirk completely disappeared. His jaw clenched, his eyes alternating between her and the unmistakable figure sitting in the driver's seat of the Tesla. The air felt thick. The playful arrogance in his stance now stiffened with unease. He took half a step back, his friends behind him exchanging nervous glances. None of them dared to speak. Emma, on the other hand, took her time. She adjusted her backpack strap, exhaling slowly, as if she hadn't just turned the tables on the school's self-proclaimed king. Elon didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, one hand on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on Derek. It was a look that carried weight, the kind of presence that didn't need words to send a message. Derek swallowed hard. "Wait a second," he muttered under his breath, almost as if he was trying to convince himself this wasn't real. His voice, usually so cocky, had a sudden edge of uncertainty. He looked at Emma again, this time really looking, like he was trying to piece together something that should have been obvious from the start. Emma leaned in slightly, just enough for Derek to hear her, though she made sure to keep her voice steady and low. "Do you still think I'm just some random girl?" she asked. Derek's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed again. His mouth opened and closed like he wanted to say something, but had lost all ability to form words. Then Elon spoke. "Get in, kid," he said, his voice calm but firm. It wasn't a question. Emma didn't hesitate. She walked past Derek, past the stunned silence of the crowd that had begun to form, and pulled open the passenger door. The moment she slid inside, Elon shifted the car into gear. The Tesla let out a silent but powerful roar as it pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a hallway's worth of whispers and widened eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city of Los Angeles blurred past the windows, the afternoon sun casting long streaks of orange and gold across the dashboard. Emma let her fingers drum lightly against her knee, exhaling as she finally released the tension that had been building since she first stepped onto that campus. Elon kept his eyes on the road, his fingers tapping the steering wheel rhythmically. "You okay?" he asked. Emma nodded briefly, then after a pause, let out a small laugh. "That was a bit dramatic, wasn't it?" Elon smiled, his signature half-smile creeping onto his face. "A little." The next morning at school, Emma expected whispers. What she didn't expect was how many people were whispering. She walked through the hallways, feeling the weight of 100 glances shifting toward her. The murmurs spread through groups of students like wildfire. Some were curious, some amused, and some, like Derek's friends, were downright pissed. She spotted them near the lockers, a tight-knit group of athletes and wannabe tough guys, all throwing dirty looks her way. Derek was in the middle, leaning against the metal, arms crossed. When he saw her, he didn't smirk. He just stared. Emma didn't flinch. She held his gaze for half a second longer than necessary before turning and walking to her class. She could hear them whispering behind her, but she didn't care. If Derek wanted to play the long game, she could play it too. By lunchtime, things had escalated. As she carried her tray toward an empty table, one of Derek's goons, Jake, a stocky linebacker with more muscles than brain cells, accidentally stuck his foot out. Emma felt herself stumble, but she caught herself before she could fall completely. Her tray clattered slightly. Some students turned to watch, their eyes darting between her and the group of jocks, who were now laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. Emma straightened, fixing her tray. She didn't react, which seemed to irritate them more. "What's wrong?" Jake grinned. "No comeback, princess." Emma exhaled sharply, barely holding back her smirk. "I just didn't realize Neanderthals still existed." The surrounding students let out a collective "oh," and Jake's smile faltered. Derek, who'd been watching the whole thing, tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to figure out his next move. Emma didn't wait for them to come up with one. She walked past them, sat down at her table, and started eating like nothing had happened. But she knew better. Derek wasn't going to let this go. Emma knew exactly what she was doing. She had seen guys like Derek before, big talkers, full of themselves, always needing an audience to validate their cruelty. They fed on the reactions they got, on the fear they instilled, on the power they thought they had. But the truth was that guys like Derek weren't as invincible as they wanted everyone to believe. They made mistakes, and Emma was patient. The final straw came a week later. Emma arrived that morning at Lincoln High and immediately caught the hushed voices, the stifled laughter, the way people huddled together, whispering and glancing toward the lockers. Something had happened, and she had a feeling she already knew what it was. She made her way toward the crowd that had gathered near Derek's locker. Students were staring, some taking photos with their phones, others murmuring in disbelief. And there it was, plastered all over the metal door, a collection of printed screenshots, messages, comments, direct conversations, every cruel, vile, degrading thing Derek had ever said about people behind their backs. Some were about students in the school, people he had pretended to be friends with only to turn around and mock them in private. Others were worse. Comments about teachers, racist and sexist remarks, things that couldn't be laughed off as jokes. But the worst part, the timestamps on those messages showed they weren't from years ago. They were recent. Derek pushed his way through the crowd, his face pale, his eyes widening as he saw what had been posted. "What the hell is this?" His voice was rough, his hands trembling slightly as he ripped the papers off the locker. But it was too late. The damage was done. Emma didn't need to say a word. She simply leaned against the opposite locker, arms crossed, watching as Derek's reputation crumbled before her eyes. Watching as the same people who used to laugh at his jokes now looked at him with disgust. Watching as his friends slowly stepped away, distancing themselves, unwilling to go down with him. Derek turned, his eyes locking onto hers. There was no arrogant smirk this time, no arrogance, no false bravado, just pure, unfiltered rage. "You did this," he hissed, his voice low, trembling with barely contained fury. Emma tilted her head slightly. "Did I?" His nostrils flared. "You think you're so smart, huh? You think this makes you better than me?" Emma took a slow step forward, her voice calm but firm. "No, Derek, I think this makes you exactly who you are. The only difference is that now everyone else sees it too." His fists clenched at his sides, his whole body vibrating with anger. For a second, she thought he might actually lose it, might actually take a swing at her right there in the middle of the hallway. But he didn't. He couldn't, because if he did, it would only prove her right. Instead, he turned on his heel and stormed off, shoving past students as he went. But Emma knew that no matter how far he ran, he couldn't escape this. His kingdom had fallen, and there was no rebuilding it. That afternoon, as she walked out of school, she found Elon leaning against his Tesla, waiting. He wore his usual calm expression, but there was something else in his eyes. Something proud. She slid into the passenger seat, exhaling slowly. Elon didn't start the engine right away. He just looked at her. "Is it over?" Emma nodded. "It's over." Elon studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "You didn't even have to throw a punch." Emma smiled, resting her head back against the seat. "I didn't need to," he laughed, finally turning the key in the ignition. As they drove away from the school, Emma thought about the past few weeks, about everything that had led up to this moment. She thought about how much had changed, not just with Derek, but with herself. She turned to Elon, a small grin playing on her lips. "Now I can finally enjoy high school." Elon laughed, shaking his head. "That's my girl." And as they sped down the road, the weight that had been pressing on Emma's chest for so long finally lifted. She had won, not by being louder or stronger or more ruthless, but by being smarter, by being patient, by letting the truth do all the work for her. And as for Derek Madison, he was just another cautionary tale. A reminder that power built on fear never lasts, and that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should really fear.